Joel Odhiambo doesn't remember how many trips he has made to the Ministry of Lands office. The surveyor's every single trip to the offices has been met by wary looks by staff and equally exasperated looks by people queuing at the offices. Getting simple tasks done, like land ownership verification, can take days and consume a lot of energy.
The present setup, the system as it is now, they have a lot of, the records are in manual. They're kept in files, and you have to queue, come and get your documents, queue, submit them, and wait for the officers to go through the files. The process of waiting can sometimes be very, very tedious because of the manual records.
And today is the third day this week. Last week I was here 3 times. The week before, maybe 3-4 times. I'm tired. I am tired.
From the agonizing everyday experiences of different professionals, it's clear that land management system in Kenya has been frustratingly inadequate. Time is wasted and corruption thrives because of the poor system of land administration in the country. The pile of files that meet Odhiambo and his colleagues is a testimony of a system mourning for reforms.
The policy also proposes to automate or computerize the land records. And I think this will really help the citizens and the investors, because one can know, you visit the lands office at your district, and after you visit the lands office at your district, you will be able to be given land information quickly. If you apply for a search, you don't wait for 2 weeks. You actually get your search in a minute because it will be computerized. If you apply for a map, you don't actually wait for a map for hours and days because it can be generated by computer there and then. If you want your land title to be processed, you don't wait for it for months and years. You get it immediately or within a day. So this way you don't even hear the incidences of a disappearing file. So corruption will be stopped.
We are trying to remove the individual officers, the Commission of Lands, and even the President from being the sole authority, so that we have a land commission which will be able to deal with questions of management of land and so on. We have also taken steps to ensure that public bodies who acquire land and want to sell it also, in both 2 instances, they must seek authority of their parent ministry.
But as the push for a new national land policy takes a new and urgent turn, it's important to understand why land is critical for the country's social stability and economic development. About 80% of Kenya's over 30 million populations derive livelihood from land. Land to them is a commodity of great cultural and economic value. But the slow swaying of the trees, the vigorous and uninterrupted flow of the rivers, and the beauty of the land can be deceiving. Land is the country's hottest and the most controversial commodity. It's Kenya's greatest asset, yet its greatest curse. The fight for independence was principally informed by the need to protect nationalist interest in land ownership. And since independence, land has remained a highly emotive issue in the country.
We are in a crisis. As a country, we have been faced with this crisis for the last almost 10 years, where people do not have access to houses. Those who have, majority of them, are living in very, very bad conditions. If you look around Nairobi, for example, the so-called slums like Kibera, like Mukuru, like Korogosho, and elsewhere, you go there and you see a real pathetic situation.
However, Kenya's land problem is as old as the country itself. A growing population has stretched the available resource and led to fragmentation of available land. Lack of clear land policies and contradicting land laws has also created a chaotic land management and ownership system. Independence was supposed to usher in a new, fair and effective land management system. Instead, the emerging new leadership retained most of the colonial system that perpetuated unfair and flawed land management system. This just deepened Kenya's land management wars.
Unfortunately, Kenya has not had a coded single land policy that would give direction to how land is accessed, managed, owned, utilized, distributed, and even sustained in terms of protection or preservation of natural land resources. The legal reforms that are envisaged in the policy want to make the laws on land less. Now we have about 75 of them. So if you make those laws up to 3, maximum of 4, then it is easy for the citizen to understand those laws, and it will be easy for the ones interpreting law, either in court or in the tribunals, to do it without ambiguity, and it will make the justice delivery system less complex, less prolonged. I also see the proposals of the policy in creating special land courts and a special division of the High Court that will deal with land as a move to making the delivery of justice or resolving land conflicts in a manner that is speedy and efficient, and that is beneficial to the citizen.
As gloomy as the picture looks, the country can still recover lost time and lost opportunities by enacting effective and progressive land management laws. All these challenges call for the formulation of a national land policy anchored on the Constitution. The approval of land policy by the Cabinet is indeed a giant step towards achieving this goal.
Through the land policy, we will have, within a single legislation, provisions dealing with the management of land generally, but also specific provisions relating to land use. It has been difficult because sometimes when you look at the Survey Act, you look at the Government Lands Act, the RLA, you look at the Environmental Law, the Water Act, all of them have something to do with the land use and even the use of our water masses, not just the land mass. But because this legislation is found in several statutes and fall under different mandates and authorities, the proper and effective formulation of policy and implementation thereof has been extremely difficult.
The policy recognizes that land is a constitutional issue and all matters of policy must be anchored in the Constitution.
So when you look at evictions, for example, happening in the urban areas, again, we do not have clear rules to show that if people are living on my land, how do I get them out? That again is not provided for. And again, the land policy is trying to streamline those. What are the rights of people who are using a given land? Even if my rights have been violated, what kind of procedure should I follow in order to ensure that justice is done, both for me and the squatters who live on that particular piece of land?
The laws were designed to exploit, not to reinvest and achieve national development. And I think over time we realize that land has been degraded because of the increasing population, especially in the areas that were occupied by the natives during that colonial time. You also realize that there are historical displacements that have not been addressed, and you also notice that corruption has found its way into the land administration system because of lack of a strategic, clear, focused direction on how land should be managed and utilized.
One of the thorny issues addressed by the new land policy is land use management. For a long time, the management of land in rural and urban areas has been haphazard and uncoordinated.
If we undertake our land management in a responsible manner, we are mindful of the outcomes. We are also mindful, or we are aware of the burdens that we pass on to the future generations. We also know the repercussions that hit us. For instance, when you talk about overutilization of land, overcultivation of land, planting of trees by the riverbeds, that kind of a thing, cutting down forests, we already can see the impact. That shows that our relationship and our understanding of our relationship with land is poor.
This has created a chaotic system of land use management that has left individuals and communities vulnerable. This is clearly evident from poor planning of urban centers, depletion of national forest reserves, and poor human settlements. In major cities like Nairobi, Kisumu, and Mombasa, the problem is further aggravated by high population growth and lack of coordination between local authorities and the central government.
When we put land under the county councils, again it meant that it's the county council that had powers over that land. The idea was that the county council was to look after this land in trust on behalf of the communities around them. But again, being who we are as Kenyans, the people in the county councils have gone ahead and thought that that is their land, that they can also divide it, give it to whomever they thought.
In rural agricultural areas, a land fragmentation has reduced the economic viability of land. Poor agricultural practices and land use system has further degraded the quality of land and its productive ability. The new National Land Policy provides a framework to address these critical challenges in land use. It aims to simplify land administration procedures and seeks to harmonize various land use, planning laws and provision of infrastructural facilities, among other priority areas.
If we had a land policy before the elections, and if that land policy had been turned into a legislative framework, we would not have fought. In fact, we went and looked at the provision, for example, on internally displaced persons, that is in the policy, after the post-election violence. And when we looked at how it has been handled, we realized that that section was prophetic, because it was done in 2005. The post-election violence happened in early 2008. And yet, the issues that have been captured in the policy on that are prophetic in that they are looking at the issue and they are proposing as to how an issue like that should be sorted out.
With this new policy, we don't want any person or anybody requiring land or using land to be put into the business of looking everywhere, like you're going through the entire laws of Kenya, to know what regulations exist when it comes to land use. But I can tell you that unless we address the issue of land use, then we are doomed as a nation. And for that matter, the Mau saga and the destruction of some of our ecosystems, the falling water levels of the Tana River, and all that is exemplification of the fact that we have not managed our resources well, and we have not put our land not only into good use, but sustainable use, which would guarantee generations to come that the finite resources that we have will suffice the use of the current generation and the generations to come.
But even as emphasis is given on land use management, the archaic information management systems in land offices has been a source of grave concern and a hindrance to effective land management system. Kenyans spend many hours in land offices, rummaging through piles of papers, trying to access basic information. As the debate on national land policy gathers steam, modernization of land information management system to create a fast and efficient system is critical to reforms of land management system. In this information technology age, an electronic information system in land offices is long overdue.
As for now, we have entirely captured 3/4 of our files, but the exercise is continuing.
It will not only create efficiency but also reduce corruption in land management. As the sun settles down gently in the city to mark the end of yet another day, many professionals like Pendo will sit down to take stock of their day. A few will be happy, but most of them will be disappointed. It's easy to lament about inefficiency, but the practical and more pragmatic step is to implement the national land policy. The policy is the best way to secure the interest of all stakeholders, the present and the coming generation.